There are 7 signs that you need to move your plants, and I've got all 7 in my border. It's Alexandra here from the Middlesized Garden YouTube channel and blog, and now, autumn or fall, is a very good time to move plants. Basically, the border will be largely as it has been over the summer, although it'll be going over, and of course you'll have been keeping some notes with your trusty notebook. But most importantly, you can actually still see the plants, whereas if you move them in spring, a lot of them will have gone underground and you won't really know where you're digging. The first sign, and the commonest, that you need to move your plants is the bald patch. You should be able to see here that this persicaria has got some big flowering and flowers and leaves all round the side, but there's a sort of bald patch in the middle. And what happens is that a great number of perennial plants, you plant them, and they flower, and then they grow and they spread out from that original root, which dies off. And so that's why you get this sort of bald patch in the middle. Now, if they spread out and the rest of your plants are quite aggressive, then actually they'll just die off because they won't be able to spread out, the other plants won't let them. If, on the other hand, like this persicaria, they really are pretty tough themselves, then they can actually spread out and outcompete the other plants in your border. So it's often called about regenerating your plants, digging them up, splitting them, replanting maybe 1/4 or 1/3 of the plant, and then it'll start to grow again, and then in 3 years later you'll have to dig them up again. The next sign that you need to move your plants is if they're leaning out. I thought these plants would be fine in this position. I didn't actually realise, I misread the label, and actually I didn't realise they were melianthus and they were going to get so tall. But even though they're at the front of the border, they're still leaning out. They need a more sunny position. So I need to move them somewhere where they've definitely got completely direct overhead light at the top. However, that's not necessarily a problem because there is also the reverse situation. So let's go and have a look at that. Now, what I have here is one of the few roses that actually is quite happy in a shady position and really not very happy in a sunny position. And you know the plant isn't happy because it's too sunny if its leaves go all scorched and brown, and it just doesn't really thrive. This rose is a beautiful rose. It's called Souvenir du Dr. Germain, and it's got beautiful red flowers, but as a plant it's never been happy here. And it would be, I think, much happier in a shady corner where it would look gorgeous. So we're going to dig that out, and that would be a brilliant place to put the melianthus because it really is a very sunny spot. The next sign you need to move your plants is when a plant hasn't done as well as it should have done. This is a geum totally tangerine, and it likes a sunny position. This is a sunny position. What could possibly go wrong? Well, the trouble is that geums don't like to dry out. And although this last summer has been very wet for the UK, we usually have very hot, dry summers in this part of the UK. And by very hot and dry, I know nothing to what most of you will have. However, it's hotter and drier than the geums would like. So actually, in this particular case, putting a geum in a very sunny position actually hasn't been brilliant. It doesn't seem that happy. Now, another reason why you'll need to move plants is when it gets overcrowded. And the most typical situation is this one here. As you can see, the Hylotelephium, which used to be known as sedum, is completely swamped by the chrysanthemum and by the pheasant's tail grass and also by this aster. Now, I did plant the plants a reasonable space apart. However, the chrysanthemum, of course, has grown out. I mean, I suppose I could lift it and divide it, but actually I do quite like it there. And the pheasant's tail grass has got much bigger as well. The sedum really needs to be somewhere much more open and sunny. So I think it's time to take the sedum out, and I will put it where the melianthus is because that would seem like a much better situation for it. It's also lower, so it'll be better at the front of the border. But there's a different sort of crowding out that's just along here. This is a more complex bit of overcrowding because it's basically accidental. A couple of years ago, there were dahlias here. We dug up the dahlias, but one bit of root got left behind and it sprouted into a dahlia. But by that time, I'd planted persicarias there. And what's more, self-seeded Verbena bonariensis has now landed. So there's 3 plants trying to grow in the same space, and not surprisingly, not many of them are happy. The Verbena is as happy as it could possibly be. The Persicaria has 1 or 2 flowers and the dahlia hasn't flowered at all. So I will have to dig the whole lot up and then decide exactly what I do want there. And I'll probably have to dig quite a big hole to make sure that there aren't any stray roots of the dahlia. Now here's another thing that happens quite often, which is when a plant doesn't grow to the size that you thought it would on the label. You can really hardly see this dahlia. It's in completely the wrong position because it's in the middle of a border with lots of much bigger things in front of it. Now I hadn't really realised the Melianthus was going to grow as tall as it is, and the dahlia is very tiny. I won't necessarily move the dahlia. I may just put the low-growing Hylotelephium in front of it so that it doesn't really matter that it's that height. But it's not necessarily your fault when plants don't turn out to be the height that you think they will be. Because if a plant is very, very happy, it may well grow to twice its height. I've got an Echinops over in the corner there, which is supposed to be about my shoulder height, and it's way over my shoulder height. It's more or less over my head height. And meanwhile, if a plant is finding it quite tough, it may well not grow as much as you think. But of course, that's part of the whole, discovering how your conditions affect the plants that you plant. Ozzy always likes to have a little bit of a munch of the Anemothele lesoniana, or pheasant's tail grass. And there's another reason why you might want to move plants or indeed get rid of them altogether, and that is reverting. This dahlia used to be an enormous dinner plate dahlia in a very rich bronze colour, and it just isn't quite that now. Now, reverting is something that can happen when a plant has been specially bred to have something about it like variegated leaves, in other words, cream and green, or perhaps it's going to have a huge great flower or particular colour. But what can happen when it's been in the garden for a while is that over the years it sort of reverts back to its parent plant. So you might lose the stripy green and cream leaves, or you might find that the flowers are no longer dinner plate dahlias, they're just ordinary flowers. Now, this is a very pretty dahlia, even not as a dinner plate dahlia. I may keep it, I may not, but it is one thing you might need to watch out for, because you might think, oh, I don't quite know why that's not looking as brilliant as it did, and indeed that may be because it's reverting. So is there anything special you need to know when you're moving plants? Really, all you do is dig up the plant. Try and dig around so that you've got as much of the root ball as possible. That's particularly important with shrubs. Shrubs are woody plants that have a woody stem that stays above the ground all year round. So my rose, for example, is a shrub. Now, one of the things you need to know about moving shrubs is that the older the shrub is, the less happy it is to move. But it's still worth a try, because if it's not happy where it is, you might as well move it. Perennials, which are plants that stay in your garden for 3 years or more and often go dormant in the winter so they disappear below the ground, are very easy to move. Indeed, most of them, you absolutely have to dig them up and split them every 3 or 4 years. And with that, just simply dig them up and try and get all of the bits of root or corm or rhizome out, because of course if you leave a little bit behind, you'll get some of the problems that I've had with the plant sort of appearing again, even though you've tried to dig it up. Once the plant's actually in its new position, it's a good idea to make sure that it is watered. Usually in autumn or fall, there's lots of rain and you may not have to worry about that. But if it is a dry autumn, make sure you water a new plant just until the winter comes. Plants don't like to be in wet, cold soil, or indeed frozen soil, so you don't have to water plants in the winter. And of course, the thing about autumn and fall is that it's an absolutely brilliant time to plant plants. So don't miss this video coming next about what to plant now, to make sure that your borders are absolutely brilliant next year. And thank you for watching. Goodbye.